Welcome to the story of how this Spanish support player went from being a self-proclaimed nobody to a top-tier professional player who paved the path for Overwatch's solar support hero. This is the story of Galaa. Born on April 9th, 2004, Jesús Núñez López was, like many of us, only a teenager when Overwatch esports kicked off. I'm sure we all have certain players and memories from those early days that have stuck with us throughout the years, and some that may have even inspired us to start grinding to be like the pros. Jesús, known by his alias Galaa, was no exception.
For me, I think everything started with the first two World Cups. Watching players like Agilities and Server playing was really great, and at the same time it was really nice to see them in the stadium.
Galaa watched on from the sidelines as players from Spain like Neptuno and Harryhook took on the likes of Team Canada's Surefour and Agilities and many more star players in the 2016 World Cup. As he observed his predecessors pioneer the esport from the World Cup to the Overwatch League, Galaa began forming his goals as a novice looking to go pro.
Well, for me, the biggest goals I had back then was to work for one of my favorite orgs, like Heretics or G2, and I achieved that goal, like now with PP. Being the greatest player at something, like for example Ana or Kiri, being the best player at something was and still is one of my goals right now.
Out of curiosity, we asked Galaa who his idols were as an aspiring player, and while one answer might surprise you, the other may paint a clearer picture of where Galaa acquired his drive to be the best.
In general, back then, it was Zeruhh. It's very fun, but it was Zeruhh. I think he had one of the biggest personalities in this game, and in the support role, I think it's Violet. Being able to destroy everyone by mechanics and play every hero in the game, he really inspired me.
Having identified Violet as his support role model early, it goes without saying that Galaa had potentially the best possible guy to follow in the support role. But of course, Violet didn't rise into the spotlight until mid-2019 with his rookie year on the San Francisco Shock. So when exactly did Galaa decide to take the leap into competitive Overwatch?
I would say on a Spanish tournament called Andromeda back then when I was a kid, and we were playing weekly that tournament, and it was really fun, to be honest.
Galaa got his start playing in a handful of European community tournaments like Andromeda and Zotac, making for a relatively chill year in 2019, with November marking Galaa's first step into the Path to Pro system, where he would begin working towards those big goals he mentioned earlier. The Overwatch Path to Pro was notoriously difficult to climb, especially if you were relatively unknown and your end goal was the Overwatch League. The idea was that setting up multiple levels of competition allowed for vertical movement of non-franchise teams and players in an attempt to let them prove themselves worthy of playing for a Tier 1 organization. From chilling with the boys to toxic nightmares, we've heard various stories sharing wildly differing views on the Path to Pro experience. So how did Galaa's early stint in the gauntlet go?
The experience was really nice, to be honest. Everyone was really kind back then, but for my personal feelings and experience, I'll say people don't take it that serious in the teams I work at, but it was fine.
November marked the beginning of an era for Galaa as he would join Spanish Open Division team Barcelona Manticores and play with them through the Open Division practice season throughout the entirety of 2020. Galaa and the Manticores had a decent start to 2020, achieving 7th in Open Division Season 1, allowing them to quickly proceed to the next step of the Path to Pro, Contenders Trials. Trials Season 1 wouldn't treat them as nicely, however, as the team struggled to make any ground, coming 9th to 12th in both Week 1 and Week 2 of competition, meaning that unfortunately, their Trials run stopped there for Season 1. While losing to Eternal Academy as an unknown team of come-ups isn't the worst thing in the world, it certainly wasn't the outcome they wanted, as they were relegated back down to Open Division for the following season, where they would place 7th to 8th and fail to qualify for Trials Season 2. September came along, and Galaa and the team would play in the EBC EMEA Regionals, placing 7th and marking the end of the Barcelona Manticores era. So from community tournaments to Path to Pro, Galaa had a bit of a lukewarm beginning of his career, struggling to make progress in the European scene. To make matters worse, the world fell victim to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, which shook up the logistics of esports, making LAN events like the World Cup impossible to host. Despite the uncertainty plaguing the environment and the uninspiring results, Gala's career had only just begun, and he'd already gained experience playing against high-level players who themselves would go on to join the Overwatch League. This stint of his career would serve him well no matter what came next. And unfortunately, after stepping in and feeling just how hot the water was, Galaa found himself in a difficult position, having to balance more and more life responsibilities on top of his Overwatch grind.
Yeah, back then, when I was a kid, I was 15 years old. My daily day was going to school, going back home. I had to travel to work on... Back then I was playing basketball as well in a different city. So I had to spend 4 hours daily outside and then coming back, studying and sleeping. That's it. That was my daily day.
Going into 2021, Galaa wanted to keep working towards his goals, but after placing 13th through 16th in Open Division Season 1 in January, he decided to step down from competition and shift his focus towards his busy schedule for the remainder of 2021 and 2022. While Galaa focused on other things, Overwatch underwent a massive transition, shedding a couple tanks, adding some much-needed new content, and fundamentally changing the landscape of the esport. But with the jump to Overwatch 2 came a wave of excitement coupled with a fair bit of skepticism mixed in, as players discussed and theorized how the game would change.
They changed a lot the game, and basically, I think they brought back to life this game.
Galaa felt excited about the changes and likely continued to play the game in his free time as he watched Overwatch Esports make the early jump to the new build in May of 2022. A few months later in October, Galaa and the rest of the world would finally get their hands on Overwatch 2, and it could not have happened at a better time, as he was finally ready to jump back into competition, invigorated by what Overwatch 2 had to show. Galaa eased back into things, playing in the RVNS Christmas Community Cup in January of 2023, where he and his team took first place. Community Cup or not, this would be Galaa's first taste of tournament victory, and was a fantastic way to set the tone as he returned to immediately face his toughest challenge yet. As he mentioned at the beginning, the World Cup meant a lot to Galaa, serving as the catalyst to his esports dreams. The lack of the World Cup was equally heart-wrenching for players as it was for fans, which is why everyone was unanimously ecstatic to see that the event would return in 2023. Having just returned himself with rejuvenated ambition, Galaa wasn't letting this opportunity slip away. He entered the World Cup Open Trials for Spain, where teams of Spanish players would compete against each other in order to earn guaranteed spots and tryouts. He joined Team Andres Iniesta alongside players like Canale and Helve, and would go undefeated in the Spain Open Trials, making him a frontrunner for a support seat. However, Roster Mania always finds a way to make things complicated.
Yeah, if they wanted to play with different people, and we had two sides inside the team, basically. So we were fighting each other pretty much every day. It was really fun. And toxic at the same time. You already know how is the Spanish environment, like we are really passionate and toxic at the same time. And I would say, besides all the problems we had, it was really fun. It was really entertainment and competitive. I don't want to share too much details, but it was like that.
After hearing about how competitive the Spanish trial process was, I asked Galaa if he ever felt concerned for his seat.
No. I mean, I'm really shy. I'm not confident at all, but at the end, inside my head, I knew I was gonna join the team.
And that he did, as Galaa was selected alongside Canale and a handful of other Spanish standouts to represent Spain on the world stage later on in the year. This marks a massive breakout for Galaa, going from a 2-year break to representing his country basically over the course of a month. Of course, the World Cup wasn't the only competition happening in 2023, as Path to Pro continued on, awaiting Galaa's return to whatever team would be lucky enough to scoop him up. That team would be Ataraxia, which was a predominantly Spanish roster that would enter the Contenders Spring Series with hopes of upsetting some of the more well-known orgs. Unfortunately, Galaa's first season of Contenders wouldn't go too well, as Ataraxia placed 11th and was eliminated in the group stage, meaning that they would have to compete in the Open Division Summer Qualifiers in order to compete in the Contenders Summer Series in the latter half of the year. Thankfully, Galaa and the team brought it together and took first in the Summer Qualifiers, allowing them to continue their path to pro in August. Ataraxia entered the Summer Series with some fresh roster changes and performed much better, achieving 7th in the group stage, which secured them a low seed in the summer playoffs. In the quarterfinals, Ataraxia faced an absolutely stacked Oblivion and suffered a 3-1 loss, sending Galaa and the team down to the lower bracket early. Ataraxia would have to crawl it back through the lower bracket, with their first opponent being Triple Esports, who was dispatched fairly decisively. In the lower bracket quarterfinals, Ataraxia would face LH Cloudy and his band of mercenaries, where they would fall 0-3 to the unconventional playstyle of SR Peak Check. So while the result wasn't a tournament win, the 2023 year of Contenders saw Galaa take meaningful steps forward and gain experience that was previously inaccessible to him. Little did they all know, however, that this tournament would effectively be the end of Path to Pro as we knew it. But we'll get into that in a little bit, as we have to rewind a couple months to revisit Galaa's World Cup journey. So the Contender Spring Series served well as an XP farm for Galaa, as it allowed him to play against many of the names he would face in the upcoming World Cup Conference Qualifiers. This was the next stage of the Overwatch World Cup, which would determine who would be traveling to Anaheim, California to take the big stage, and who would be staying home to watch from their home country. Spain was placed in Group A with a lot of Europe's perceived heavy hitters such as the United Kingdom, France, and Denmark, and would have to outscore at least one of these teams in the standings in order to achieve top 3 in their group and advance to the main event. On day 1, they defeated the Netherlands, on day 2, they beat the Belgians, and on day 4, they suffered a surprising loss to Team Italy. Going forward, they could not afford any more winnable losses, and they took this to heart as they went on to upset Denmark and France in the following days. These wins practically secured Spain's spot at the main event, and a predictable loss to the UK followed by one final dub against Portugal sealed the deal, earning Galaa and Team Spain second place in Group A and tickets to California. A few months before the main stage kicked off, the community received a new hero which captured the attention of bloodthirsty supports all over the world. Of course, I'm talking about Illari, who joined the hero roster in August of 2023 and became the center of attention due to speculation about her role in competitive play.
Well, at the start, I thought it was shit. The hero was shit. It had no utility at all, and it's a really selfish hero. But back then, I needed something for the World Cup to grind and work out around, and Illari came out, and it was perfect as scenario for me.
Whether or not she ended up being meta, she represented a massive opportunity to catch teams off guard and outplay other supports in the mirror matchup.
Well, at the start, in the main stage, we had to qualify against France and Denmark. We had to play different comps, because in mirror we will just lose to everyone. So we had to play some dive, some unaccurate stuff, something different. And slowly, everything started to work out. And before the main stage, it was in August, more or less, Illari came out, and it was the perfect chance for us to do something different, do something people are not used to it, and try to win by defender.
Galaa only had a few months to get the hang of Illari, but he made sure to make the most of that time.
I focused on her so much that I think slowly I just became one of the best, probably, in terms on, at least mechanically.
So Galaa practiced Illari as much as possible in preparation for the main stage, and in November, he and the team arrived in Anaheim, ready to kick some ass. Spain was in Group C alongside Thailand, Hong Kong, and China, and would easily defeat the first two while falling to the team from China to advance past the group stage, with Galaa beginning to tease the Illari he would soon become known for. While Galaa's Illari and Team Spain's exceptional team play was enough to get them through the group stage, they would immediately be met with the tournament dark horse of Saudi Arabia in the playoffs. Despite their best efforts, the 2023 Saudi Arabian World Cup roster was just too strong, and Galaa would fall alongside his Spanish companions 0-3 at the hands of Quartz, UB, and the rest of the team that would in fact go on to win the World Cup. So while Team Spain didn't take the dub in the end, a 5th to 6th place finish was extremely respectable, as not many fans had them in their sights prior to the event. This was by far the biggest event Galaa had ever been a part of, and represented the peak of his career at the time. This experience would undoubtedly stick with him far into the future.
I was really excited to play in the biggest arena I always wanted to play, and then I figured out we weren't gonna play there. It was really fun and sad at the same time. But besides that, like watching the crowd cheering for us, and other teams as well. I remember myself watching Milan and Saudi Arabia, watching KSA and Vestala playing each other, and it was really fun to watch. Thank God I was there. I really enjoyed that experience.
So with that, Galaa's World Cup journey came to an end, and while it would be nice to dive into another one, the event unfortunately has not returned since 2023, leaving fans desperately craving another taste of the incredible slice of culture it came to be. It might not be the end of Galaa's World Cup ambitions, however, as 2026 may have something very special in store. But we'll talk more about that later, because this is a pivotal point in Galaa's story, as Overwatch Esports was about to change forever going into 2024. I'm sure you already know where I'm going with this, but for those of you who are new to the scene, 2023 was the final year of the era of Overwatch League, which defined the ecosystem, as basically everything from Path to Pro to the World Cup was at least somewhat influenced by the Overwatch League. Blizzard had big plans to shake things up, ushering in the brand new Overwatch Champion Series. This new system was practically designed for players like Galaa, who had a lot to prove, but struggled to make headway in the Path to Pro, with its open design allowing for more vertical movement for teams and players looking to punch up.
I was no one back then. When Overwatch League was alive, I was no one. I didn't play in Contenders. I didn't play for a big team. No one knew me. So pretty much I understand it. And I was really young as well. But it was really sad. It was very close. Like, you don't know ex-players and you're not friends with him. It was almost impossible for you to come inside that league. Like, it was really hard and there was no point, to be honest. Like, outside of Paris Eternal and Vancouver, it was almost impossible to join a team.
With that in mind, Galaa was certainly looking forward to OWCS and all that it had to offer. On November 9th, 2023, Galaa left Ataraxia and joined SR Peakcheck, the same team that ended his final run in Contenders. Galaa played with them for a few months before moving over to Left Right Goodnight when Stage 1 finally rolled around in March of 2024. Galaa and Left Right Goodnight needed a top 16 finish in the Swiss stage to advance to Stage 1, which they would accomplish by placing 11th. Left Right Goodnight had their work cut out for them after a lukewarm Swiss stage, and would hope to find an answer quickly. But Galaa's first stage of OWCS would be wasted on the bench, as Left Right Goodnight struggled in the group stage against Quick Esports and Bubo Spraycheck, who would go on to become Ents, ending the stage with a 9th to 12th place finish and just short of playoffs. It was clear to Galaa that something needed to change, and he would depart to go back to a familiar team for Stage 2. Ataraxia. Galaa really needed a good placement to build some momentum going into the new format, and with Ataraxia bolstering their lineup with a plethora of ex-Overwatch League talent, he would achieve that in the Swiss stage, with the team placing 5th, a much more inspiring result than the 11th place finish from the stage prior. However, OWCS was proving to be extremely competitive, with ex-Overwatch League players forming powerful super teams and unknown players forming teams to punch up in ways they'd never been able to before. Ataraxia faced the latter in the group stage, having to face off against the volatile one-trick squad Aw Yeah and a team of relatively unknown players, Peace and Love. Ataraxia would unfortunately fall to both of these teams, ending Galaa's Stage 2 with yet another 9th to 12th place finish. But it's not like Galaa himself was playing poorly. In fact, Galaa had begun turning heads thanks to his flashy Illari play and occasional role swapping between main and flex support, both signature traits of his idol. And what an ideal time it was to be farming attention, as the long-teased Esports World Cup was quickly approaching, and there were a lot of teams looking to sign Overwatch rosters, so naturally Galaa reflected on his experience thus far and began talking to his connections. If you've been paying attention to the esport in the last year, then you already know what happened next.
At the start was really hard for me because I had some issues with my family and myself, and after losing to Extra, Kepler and Shockwave pretty much, people started to think main support was important back then, and they wanted to play with different players, and slowly with all the issues I had, I was outside of the entire environment pretty much until Stage 3, I started to play with Shockwave and Kenail. We were going to make the best team possible. I think Shockwave messaged me back then and Kenail. And at the start, we were me, Sauna, Shockwave, Kenail, and Cloud. We were looking for a tank player. We messaged with so many different people. I think that Zeruhh was the first one to reply, and that's it. Literally, that was the main reason we picked him up. And everything slowly started to work. TP contacted us, and now I'm here.
This core formed the brand new roster for this historic organization's debut into Overwatch. On June 11th, 2024, these players took a big leap in their careers, signing to Virtus Pro, which is of course a large, popular, and storied esports organization. This roster would be exactly what Galaa needed to begin making real strides in OWCS, as his longtime connection with Kenail made for an extremely synergistic backline, and his ex-Overwatch League DPS line of Shockwave and Sauna made for a deceptively sharp spear.
Well, outside of Shockwave, I was working out with Kenail a lot of times, and back then in Team Spain and Ataraxia. For me, Shockwave was a really huge idol for me back then. Like Shockwave, Kevin, Kai, watching Overwatch League every day, I watching them play. I really wanted to play with him.
Virtus Pro picked up Galaa and friends in preparation for the brand new Esports World Cup, which would take place in just a month's time. So Galaa and VP began their road to EWC by placing 5th in Face It League Season 1, which was enough for them to punch their ticket to Saudi Arabia the following month. Galaa and the team arrived in Saudi Arabia to face off against the best Overwatch teams in the world for a chance to earn $400,000 by winning the event. VP would find themselves in Group D alongside Fnatic, Space Station Gaming, and Nightmare, and would go on to defeat all three and set the tone for Virtus Pro's ambitions in Overwatch 2. Going 3-0 in the group stage allowed them to advance to playoffs, where they would finally take the big stage after being relegated to the back rooms in order to face one of the most daunting opponents imaginable, Team Falcons. Not only was Team Falcons composed of some of the greatest Overwatch players to grace the earth, but they also had full support of the Saudi Arabian crowd, which would do no favors for Galaa and VP. They tried their best and even took a map which forced Falcons to target ban Galaa's Illari on map 4, which unfortunately was the nail in the coffin for Virtus.pro at the Esports World Cup. The team left Saudi Arabia with a 5th to 8th place finish, which was genuinely impressive for a team that had just been thrown together a month prior. The team still had a lot of work to do though, so they would cherish their memories of the grand event and quickly push on back into OWCS. Virtus.pro took their momentum from EWC and kept it flowing into OWCS Stage 3, placing first in the Swiss bracket with Galaa and the team wiping the floor with SR Peak Check. This, of course, brought them to the Stage 3 playoffs where VP would annihilate a one-man army, place Space Station extremely close in a 3-2 victory, and then meet ENCE in the upper bracket final where they would finally fall in a tough 0-3 loss. This dropped them down to the lower bracket where they would once again face Space Station, but this time the gloves were off and VP made a statement with a 3-0 victory. This landed Galaa his first seat in a major Overwatch event finals versus ENCE. The grand finals started off rough with VP going down by 2 maps. They weren't ready to give in just yet though, as they turned around from Surabasa to take 2 maps of their own. The next map win would trigger match points, so ENCE brought it to Colosseo and outpushed VP by 10 meters. With their backs against the wall, Galaa and the team decided to take the match to Junkertown in an attempt to tie it up. But unfortunately, ENCE was just too strong that day, and an incomplete Junkertown point C spelled the end for Galaa and the team for Stage 3. The final big event for the year would be OWCS Stage 4, which was essentially just a qualifier for playoffs, with 16 of the top European teams battling it out in a Swiss stage with the goal of being one of the top 3 teams that would head to DreamHack Stockholm in November. Thus far, in the latter half of 2024, Galaa and Virtus.pro seemed to be growing into one of the strongest teams in Europe, but the other top teams in the region were no pushovers. ENCE, Space Station, and Twisted Minds all had their own claims to the throne, so this Swiss stage was extremely hard to call between these 4 titans of Europe. Of course, we saw VP lose to ENCE not long before Stage 4, but unfortunately, Galaa and the squad wouldn't even get the chance to face ENCE in the Stage 4 playoffs, as they lost to Space Station in the upper bracket and were eliminated by Twisted Minds in the lower bracket. This marked the end of 2024 for Galaa and the Virtus.pro roster as we knew it, as they placed 4th in Stage 4, just 1 spot away from attending the main event at DreamHack. While the end wasn't pretty and the team missed out on Stockholm, 2024 was still a huge year for Galaa, making it to EWC and appearing in his first Tier 1 Grand Finals match ever. So with 2024 over and Team Falcons taking the crown, Galaa was eager to see what 2025 would bring as he awaited an inevitable roster mania. The offseason would not last long, and teams were rapidly rising and falling, with big names like ENCE, Toronto Defiant, and NRG Shock leaving the esport altogether. With all the talent floating around, Galaa's seat on Virtus.pro wouldn't be guaranteed as he watched on as Sana, Cloud, Rajaro, and his support duo Canale left the team going into Stage 1 of 2025. The org had big plans, however, and made moves to sign Vestola from ENCE for the tank spot and utilized their import slots to sign up-and-coming Korean flex DPS player UYOU and Overwatch League role star Fixa. Thankfully, Galaa had done more than enough to prove himself as a valuable player, as he and Shockwave retained their seats for the 2025 season. While these moves were great on paper, there were questions about synergy, with the new Korean players presenting a potential communication struggle and Galaa's Canale connection being severed entirely.
I was sad, but at the same time it was great for both of us. He was gonna play with one of his best friends and with a main support, and I started to play and develop my flex support as well. Because before I was playing Lucio, I was playing Kiri sometimes, Break. Like I was developing myself. So it's really sad to see him working for other team, but at the same time it's good for both of us.
Of course, losing Canale is tragic due to their history, but Galaa surely wouldn't be disappointed with his new teammates.
No. It was really great. Like we were destroying everyone first week. It was really fun. Like everyone started to play 2 weeks before us. We came out to our team house. We started playing and we started to destroy everyone. It was really fun to watch. Yeah, I remember one legend. I think it was first fight. My Genji, Zeruhh, was literally dashing like this, Necros, so fucking fast and killing 5 people in 3 seconds. It was incredible and really fun to watch.
While excited about his new teammates, Galaa would actually be forced to make a big change to his gameplay thanks to one of them. See, Galaa had mostly been playing main support on his teams thus far, occasionally jumping to a flex support hero while of course also flexing the Illari as much as he could. But most of the time you would expect to see Galaa playing Lucio or Brigitte back in the day. His new teammate Fixa would throw a wrench in all of that, as he was a much more experienced main support player who wasn't known to have much of a flex support. But with Galaa playing the Illari at a level that few could rival at the time, it was clear to Coach Smash that he had more than enough potential to make the full-time swap over to flex support.
You had to focus on same things. Like my mechanical is not an issue, just how I play the hero. As for example, Kiriko, in the flex I have to play for myself, really selfish, in the off angle, trying to shoot someone in the head. But when I'm playing with a main support, and I have to play Kirillus, for example, I have to... I wasn't used to kill people. Like, it's a little bit crazy, but I wasn't used to kill people. Like, I wasn't used to stay behind and watch the situation and try to get each other. I wasn't used to that. And I'm still getting flamed by that sometimes.
The main and flex support roles are vastly different in how they operate, as Galaa mentioned, with flex support generally having a larger focus on damage and main support having a higher emphasis on utility and healing. So Galaa began harnessing the power of the bloodthirsty flex supports before him, but would never forget about his days as a main support.
I miss playing it sometimes, being able to play every hero, basically. Because now I don't touch Lucio or Break at all. Like, I know Fixa's way better than me, so there's no point of me trying to practice any of those heroes. But I miss playing them sometimes. Sometimes I randomly swap in scrims, I get blamed, and he literally went out of the room. It cases me on Lucio, for example. But I'm considering myself flex support now. My Lucio and Brig are not that great, but they're playable sometimes. Not against the best players in the world, like Shu or Choron, but in EU maybe it can work.
With his role now swapped, it was time to suit up and enter Stage 1 of the OWCS 2025 season, but with their absence at DreamHack at the end of last year, people weren't exactly looking at Virtus.pro to be a top team in Europe, with the likes of Twisted Minds, Gen G, the Ultimates, and OWCS shaping up to be exciting rosters.
Yeah, people don't rate us that much, especially me. I don't think everyone cares too much about me. I'm just a support player who plays Juno in my team. I'm not like the biggest star like Shockwave or Vestolan killing people every fight. I'm just there killing people and killing each other, and that's it. But it's nice to crush them expectations.
The format of OWCS had changed going into 2025, with the first major event planned for the end of Stage 1 this time around, which meant that the pressure was on immediately, as there would be no time for a slow start this year. But as it turns out, Galaa and the squad aren't in the business of slow starts, and came out the gates swinging, taking down Gen G, then Team Ultimates, Sakura, Twisted Minds, Team Peps, Alcadzia, and finally Team Vision to close off a perfect 7-0 stage. Needless to say, they cooked. Each part of the roster was locked in, with Galaa smoothly stepping into his role as full-time flex support. This not only crushed people's expectations, but it made fans start to see Virtus.pro as one of the teams to beat going into the Champions Clash in Hangzhou, China.
They've stepped too close to the jaws of the beast, and Vestola and Virtus.pro are going to sing this one home. A 2-0 on Samoa, and Virtus.pro are your Stage 1 EMEA champions.
10-0, that's the final record for Virtus.pro here in Stage 1 of EMEA. Dominant throughout, and they ended it putting on a Mauga masterclass, completely outmaneuvered their opponent in Alcadzia. Both teams, of course, qualified to China already, but this is the little cherry on top. Being proclaimed the Stage 1 champion, that has to feel good for Virtus.pro.
10-0, not quite the golden stage with no map losses, but a 10-0 nonetheless.
Going into Champions Clash, Galaa and the team would reunite with many of the same players and teams they faced during their last LAN event at EWC. As mentioned before, the flawless stage made them the team to beat from Europe, but as is typical of Overwatch, the meta wouldn't just stay the same forever.
Like 10 days before, more or less, people started to play Monkey, Yosokiri, and before they were playing Anaplik, we had an answer against that. But people were slowly developing Monkey, Yosokiri, and it was almost impossible to win. We had an answer, we were practicing a lot against T1, against Ana, but Ana disappeared from that equation, and it was Kiri, and it became almost impossible to win. Even if we were playing really good, it was really hard.
With the meta changing rapidly just before the event, Galaa and the team were blindsided and underprepared for the new meta that would emerge with a focus on Winston, Lucio, and Kiriko. This manifested early on in their first match against Once Again, with Galaa stuck on the Kiriko and the rest of the team struggling to find a comfortable composition. Once Again would defeat Virtus.pro 2-0, sending them to the lower bracket to face off against one of their regional rivals in Ataraxia. Virtus.pro would find a way to subvert the perceived meta and play Galaa on the Juno and Illari as much as possible, making for a much smoother time as they would defeat Ataraxia in a decisive victory, with AQ never capturing a point the entire series. With AQ out of the way and eliminated, Galaa and the team were on to their next opponents, who they most definitely did not expect to meet this early in the tournament. Of course, as many of you know, Nightmare absolutely popped off against Crazy Raccoon in the upper bracket, sending the Japanese org down to the lower bracket in an extremely unforeseen turn of events. And well, the unlucky team that would have to face them would of course be Virtus.pro. Lijiang Tower was snatched away by Crazy Raccoon swiftly, which prompted VP to take the match to Circuit Royale in order to leverage Galaa's Illari and Vestola's Sigma. Crazy Raccoon, however, had their own Sigma Prodigy and Max, and ended up taking the map by completing the escort and holding VP on point C. With things looking bleak, Galaa and Virtus.pro decided to go to King's Row, a map that Nightmare had used to start their own comeback. And well, it actually worked, with VP completing their escort and getting revenge for the last map by holding CR on point B. A reverse sweep was on the table, but VP were now facing Crazy Raccoon's map pick of Esperanza, and unfortunately Crazy Raccoon had enough of losing to Western teams and absolutely ran away with the final map of the series, ending Galaa and Virtus.pro's run at Champions Clash. Needless to say, after going undefeated in Stage 1, this wasn't exactly the result that Galaa or Virtus.pro were looking for, but to echo my sentiment around OWC, this was still a great result for such a newly formed roster, especially considering that two of the teams that they faced had been together for at least a year. Altogether, the first stint of OWCS 2025 was exceptional for Galaa and the squad, with Galaa himself reflecting on his journey thus far and how his previous LAN experiences from both kinds of World Cups contributed to his performance in Hangzhou.
Yeah, it really helped. Also, it looked at more professionally wise from the entire team. They were taking it more seriously, the coach and the players instead. And the places were as well, like China, Saudi, the hotels, the environment, the crowd, everything was so nice. Visually wise, I think I did great. Man, I did really great. Sometimes I misplayed it, but it can happen. The thing was, I wish that I was playing other heroes as well, because sometimes we were preparing for our match once again and everything started to feel worse. We were practicing a lot of Juno and it started slowly to not work, and I think everything started to stress us a lot. And I wish I was able to do other side something different back then. I regret that a little bit.
And so we find ourselves approaching the present day, with Virtus.pro gearing up for Stage 2 and signing tank player Ice Gnome to bolster the roster and improve their flexibility for future events.
At least be able to play monkey comps and pretty much everything outside of Dragons and Consagons. Like being able to play main tank comps, pretty much monkey, a little bit of hazard, maybe sometimes ball. And I would say Vestola is able to play those heroes, but he really doesn't want to develop it. So that's why we pick it up base.
So far, Stage 2 has really shaken things up with the introduction of Freya to the hero roster, as her impact has proven to be extremely potent here at the start of Stage 2, with some prominent players struggling on her and lesser-known players finding their stride. Galaa and VP would need to make the most of Freya while she's so strong, but they started off shaky, nearly losing to Quick Esports but closing it out 3-2.
For me, it was not exciting at all. We were backing up from China. We were gonna play against some European teams again, and I would say I was focused in the match, but I wasn't expecting them to match us like with that intensity, and I was dying a lot, I would say, that match. I was one of the biggest reasons. I would say it was hard. I was dying a lot, and we didn't have a lot of plans in game.
Week 2 saw VP shut out a struggling Gen G before getting revenge served by a thriving Ataraxia a week later. And finally, in Week 3, Galaa and the team defeated Frosttails in yet another dominant 3-0. And with that, we are entirely caught up with Galaa's history as we continue to follow OWCS Stage 2, with Galaa and VP currently being tied for second in EMEA with 3 weeks left of the Stage 2 regular season. While Virtus.pro are still looking like one of the strongest rosters in the region, their competition is fierce, and every day these pro Freya players will get better and better. So we'll have to see if Galaa and Virtus.pro can adapt in order to once again earn a spot at the next event, as he now has a grudge against both top Korean teams, having been eliminated from his two biggest events by the Juggernauts.
Well, I'll say we're not focused on trying to win Europe. We are focused on trying to develop ourselves to match the Korean teams. That's our objective. We have to try to win them, not EMEA. That's already on us. In our mentality, we have to win everything in EMEA and try to match the Koreans. So I'll say our biggest target to focus on right now is to develop ourselves individually and as a team as well, and be able to play way more counts.
As Galaa and the team continue on their course through 2025, let's jump ahead a year to 2026 because Blizzard has teased that BlizzCon will be returning for the first time since 2023, which of course means that we might see the long-awaited return of the Overwatch World Cup. Galaa, already having a World Cup under his belt and being one of the few prominent Spanish players in the scene, is a shoo-in for a support seat on Team Spain next year, so who else would join him?
But it would be me, Kanail, and Zodial, of course, and then we will have to look for two rookies, I guess. There's no one specifically in my mind right now. I think we will make it to LAN, but it'll be hard. We'll have to focus on improving ourselves as individuals and as a team as well.
With those three making up the core, the 2026 Team Spain roster is already looking extremely solid, but as Galaa mentioned, they would most likely be looking for rookies to fill those extra spots. This prompted the question, how popular is Overwatch in Spain these days?
I think content creators are making a really good job in the Spanish community because we have the Nikki, for example, Jesús and Grot. They're making really good job. They're making the casual viewers really interested for the game. And outside of the casual, I would say there's not a lot of pro gamers outside of me, Kanail, and Zodial. No one is really looking forward to become a pro.
So if you're a Spanish tank or flex DPS player, it's time to get grinding because there are seats up for grabs, and you could play alongside Galaa yourself if you've got what it takes. As we wind down, let's return to Galaa's claim to fame, his Illari. For almost her entire existence, Galaa has been one of, if not the best pilot of the hero. So you could say that he's basically accomplished both of his original goals of joining a well-known European organization and becoming the best at a specific hero. But just because Galaa has a calling for Illari doesn't mean that he's always been her biggest fan. And as it turns out, having people heavily analyze your gameplay can be more nerve-wracking and less flattering than you may think.
Sometimes I feel the pressure. Everyone is watching me when I play Illari, but it's fine. Especially when out, the ult is dog shit. It doesn't do anything. That's why sometimes I just throw it across the map and that's it. I just try to make pressure because when I press ult, slowly my team will keep working forward, right? But if I press it across the map, my team will be alive. That's why I throw it across the map, and if it hits, nice. If it doesn't hit, okay, it doesn't really change anything. In terms of killing people and impact by myself, it doesn't really change. Sometimes it can work, but sometimes it's not enough. I don't deal enough damage, and sometimes they can ignore me because I cannot kill shit. I cannot kill anyone if they're playing good enough. And my mechanics are not, they're great, but comparing myself with Violet, for example, I'm behind still in mechanics.
Like much of the community, Galaa has found it a bit difficult to extract the maximum value from Illari due to her sometimes awkward kit and comparatively lackluster ultimate ability.
For example, the Illari, the impact you can do by yourself is really low, and you just watch some Reddit comments, you just miss it. For example, Violet, he misses almost everything on Illari, but you have to press Q, otherwise your team will die, so sometimes you have to deal with that. And one of the biggest parts of why I really like Violet is he doesn't care that much about everything. He just tries his hardest, and if he has to blame someone, or if he has to try to coach them or something, he will do that. Thing.
After hearing about the difficulties of playing Illari, especially at a professional level, I asked Galaa if he had any suggestions for the dev team.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard because this is not the hero itself, just the other people who dies. You cannot kill them at all. You cannot protect them. So if they ignore you and kill your entire backline, what can you do? You cannot do anything. And it's really hard. I'm in the off angle trying to shoot people, they don't die, and my team dies, and I'm alone out there,
So it seems like Illari may have some deep-rooted issues that extend beyond her personal kit, at least in pro play, but we'll let the devs figure that one out. Finally, I had to know how a player goes from taking 2 years off to competing on the world stage in such a relatively short amount of time, and the answer will not shock you.
Well, I personally watch a lot of POEs, especially Koreans. I try to watch Sharon, Shu, Fielder, Chiyo, and even outside of pro gamers, people like Jonak. They understand the game way better than Europeans and Americans. So every time you can, just watch Koreans and try to think why are they making these decisions and playing like they're playing. But understanding the game, that's why people rate so much Gerex. It has to make it simple for the team and trying to understand the game and make it an easy way to win. And that will help so much the team, way more than you killing people across the map on Kirio, Ana, or stuff like that.
Just like in any area of life, it's always best to learn from the best. Of course, just watching VODs isn't going to help turn you into the next Galaa, but it can absolutely help when supplemented by a good amount of practice, scrimming, or playing in the new Face It Players League, where Galaa has time and time again topped the leaderboard, earning a bit of cash while practicing diligently against other passionate invitees.
I think it's really good to have that system, like in-game. I would say it came out at the start, like when the game was out. I think everyone will play it, like they will take it in a serious way. Try to come, try to win, try to develop yourself, try to look at your gameplay, watch some POVs, like try to develop yourself as a player. Because right now you just take it, just play there sometimes, and if you win you take some money and that's it. But it's a really good system to have. For some players like Pete or myself, being able to improve my comms, even with not the greatest players of time, but it can work. And it can help me to grow up a little bit.
Improvement also doesn't just happen in the server, as your body and mind being in top shape can translate to better focus, communication, and even gameplay.
I think something interesting is outside of the game, I try to improve my diet and myself as well. Like trying to improve other things outside of the game. Went to the gym, went to work out, having some fun with friends, trying to focus on other stuff on your life. And it will slowly help you inside the game as well.
Well, we have made it to the end of our spotlight on Galaa, and I must say that it was extremely entertaining going back in time and reliving Galaa's career event by event. Already being at the highest level of competition and having tons of room for growth, I think it's safe to say that we'll be seeing Galaa for a while, and I can't wait to see what he accomplishes next. With that, I leave you with a message from Galaa.
Well, I would say I'm sorry for our performance at LAN. I know for some people, we make it to the LAN, and it was a really good job for us. But for some people, not being able to beat Hangzhou or Dragons are disappointing results. So I'm really sorry for that. I would say I will try to fix that. I will try to work harder. And thank you for the support. It really makes me happy. And the whole crowd and fans cheering us on Twitter, social medias, or even in LAN events. It's really nice to see them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching, and of course, a very special thanks to Galaa for sitting down with us for a wonderful interview. Be sure to follow Galaa and Virtus Pro on social media to catch updates on their journey, and also subscribe to our channel if you like this video and want to see more like it. This is the third installation of our Spotlight series, so be sure to check out our coverage of the Hisense Wrecking Ball Warlord UYOU and the North American Genji Prodigy Zeruhh if you haven't already. And of course, thank you so much to our patrons over at Patreon, as your contributions are massively appreciated and help us continue to put out premium Overwatch content. If you want to check out the pricing and benefits, the link is in the description. What's up? It's me. I've materialized myself into my physical form to tell you that we have partnered with Oblivione, which is insane. They are an amazing organization that really cares about Overwatch, the community, and telling stories like the ones that we tell here. So keep an eye out for some dope content, and thank you so much to everyone at Oblivione for welcoming us to the family. Isn't that right, Caesar? I've been your writer, narrator, and editor, ShoddyFlow, signing off, but not before giving humongous thanks to the rest of our team here at OWCS Productions for their work behind the scenes. I may be the yapper, but I couldn't do it alone, so thank you so much to OWCS, Unfeatured, and ET. You guys absolutely rock. And that does it for me. Thanks again for watching. Deuces.